What's going on, guys? My name is Lieben, and today I'm going to be replacing the rear wheel bearing on my 2007 Mini Cooper. So right here we have the brand new wheel bearing. Obviously in there is the old one. Gone ahead and taken the wheel off, and now I'm going to go ahead and take the brake disc off. So the disc itself is being held on, one by the caliper here, and then also by that bolt right there. So what I need to do is go ahead and unscrew that bolt first. I've done it before where I let go of the handbrake and that loosens up the caliper here. But then when I try to unscrew that bolt, the whole rotor is breaking. So make sure not to do that. Make sure you keep the handbrake on and take that bolt off first. So I'm going to go ahead and find out what size torque screw that is, and we can go ahead and take it off. Okay, so it is a T50 start point socket. So let me go ahead and find a ratchet, and I can go ahead and take it off. So it seems to be kind of stuck on there. Once I start loosening it, it starts tightening up. So I'm gonna see if I can get penetrating oil on the backside here, and hopefully that makes it easier to come out and it does not snap on me. So just give it a few minutes to have that penetrating oil kind of soak in there, and I'll also have to make sure that you can see right here some of that penetrating oil leaked onto the surface of the brake rotor, and I have to make sure to clean that off with some brake cleaners before we put the tire back on. And here is that bolt. Here you guys can see how it was starting to, it's not rusted, but it was starting to get seized up. Luckily that penetrating oil did help. So now I can go inside, and I'm going to go ahead and release the handbrake. And one thing I would recommend before releasing that handbrake is putting something in front of your tires, especially if it's like this car that it is a stick shift. You don't want it rolling on you. So if you guys can see up there, I've actually on both of the front tires I put just like a block of wood. Hopefully that kind of keeps it in place. Hopefully it doesn't roll at all, but if it were to start wanting to roll when I let go of the handbrake, it should be stopped by those blocks of wood. I will go ahead and release the handbrake, and then we should be able to take off the whole caliper assembly. It should only be 2 bolts on the back side there. So the bolts that we want to take off are going to be this guy right here, and then this guy on the bottom right there. So they are both 16mm bolts. So they're bolts. So I got the socket here, and I'll also need an extension because they are pretty deep in there. There's the first bolt right there. And there is the second bolt. And now I'm gonna need to find something to actually set the caliper down on, because you don't want it just hanging, because that could damage some of the lines that are actually attached to the caliper. So I was finally able to take that caliper off. It was pretty stuck on there, but as you guys saw with me wiggling back and forth, it eventually did come off. I was able to put it on top of a kind of piece of wood, and also a box right here where the jacks came in. I just didn't want it to be hanging, and right now it's not. It's sitting pretty good on top of the block of wood right here. I'm just hoping it gives me enough space to still be able to work on the other side, since now we're going to have to go ahead and, well, first we're going to go ahead and remove the brake rotor. I believe it has like, it looks like a little plastic kind of like a retainer that keeps the wheel or brake rotor on. I did not know that it had that at first, but I'm pretty sure just by kind of tugging on the brake rotor itself, it seems to be loosening up. So I'm just gonna pull it on opposite sides, and that should come off like that. It doesn't seem to be too stuck on there. So this right here is the clip that I was talking about. I'll just go ahead and set it off next to the rotor, because we will need to put it back on once we put the new wheel bearing on. And right here is the wheel bearing that we will be replacing. So you can't see it. Actually, I can show you guys here. Right there, you can see the top two bolts that we will need to take off for the wheel bearing to come off. Does seem pretty dirty back there. And you can see the bottom one right there. And the last one right there. So in total, there are going to be 4 bolts that we need to remove from the other side. So I'll go ahead and get you guys placed down and we can see what size the bolts are. Okay, so from this angle, you can kind of see all of the 4 bolts that we're going to have to take off. You have the 2 bottom ones right there and there. And then one of the top ones is right there. And then the other one is right here. Kind of see it, and they are all 16mm bolts as well, kind of like the ones that we use to take the caliper off, so that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and see. I believe it might be a tight fit, but we should be able to get to them just with some extensions and the 16mm socket. Here's the second bolt, and you know, it's honestly times like these where I kind of wish I had a battery powered wrench that would make this go a lot faster than having to turn it like 100 times. But 2 down and 2 more to go. And here we have the old wheel bearing. It's on the ground because when I took that last bolt off, it didn't stay stuck on there. It's pretty heavy, so it fell down when that last bolt came off, but which doesn't really matter because it's the old one. So yeah, I don't really care what happened to that one. What I did want to make sure is that when it fell off that it didn't actually damage the sensor, and it seems pretty good. It's a little bit dirty, so what I'm gonna have to do right now is just clean this up a little bit, and then I'll be able to put the new one back on. I'm gonna see if I can hold it in place with one hand from this side, while on the other hand I thread the first bolt, so at least it doesn't fall and it can be somewhat in place. So I gave the area where the wheel bearing is going to be sitting a quick clean. I also went ahead and cleaned the bolts with a wire brush. So if you guys see right here, this hump right here should align up with the little hump that the wheel bearing has right there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and feed this bolt here through the back side. I'm going to leave it right there. Actually, that's not the right spot. It's actually this bolt that I'm trying to feed through right now. There we go. There's that guy. Now I'm going to line up the back side of the wheel bearing. And hopefully I can thread the bolt. Alright, so there's one bolt. Now let's see if I can feed some of the other ones. Alright, so I know there wasn't much to see from this angle, but now there you guys can see all 4 of them have been threaded through. And I do recommend threading them as much as you can with your hand. It will save you some time than when you're with the ratchet trying to tighten them down. Of course, you still will need it to tighten them all the way down, but it saves you time from having to do it on that end where it's a little bit more uncomfortable. But before I go on the other side and finish tightening them down, there is also some like shipping oil that's on the surface of the wheel bearing here where it makes contact with the brake rotor. So I'm just going to go ahead and give a quick wipe down. And because that's for obvious reasons, you know, you don't want oil on your brakes that's supposed to slow you down. Alright, so let's go to the other side and tighten those 4 bolts down. And now I don't know if this was necessary, but if you guys saw, the way that I tightened it was in a cross pattern. So I started off with that top left one, then I went to the bottom right, then bottom left, and then top right. Like I said, I don't know if this is necessary, but because the brake rotor goes attached to this, I don't want to risk the tire starting to wobble if this isn't centered correctly. That's just my way of thinking. Like I said, I have no idea if that matters at all. But I have finished tightening all 4 of those bolts, so now I can go ahead and put the brake rotor back on. So the brake rotor has been cleaned, so now you just want to go ahead and align the hole with the one that's gonna have the bolt. Right there, so let me grab the bolt here. So right now you guys kind of just saw what I said at the beginning. If you would have taken off the caliper at first, you wouldn't have been able to unloosen, or yeah, you wouldn't have been able to loosen the bolt because it would have turned, it would have kept on turning. So right now I tried to tighten it. I was able to do it a little bit, but I can't fully tighten it yet because it just spins freely. So now we're gonna go ahead and put the brake caliper back on. Then I can go ahead and pull the handbrake up and have it tightened down, and then I can go ahead and finish tightening this bolt. And in case you guys are wondering why there is a piece of wood sticking out of the brake caliper, that is because I do not have one of those ratchets that actually compress the brake caliper. So what I do is I just put a piece of wood. It's basically like a shim. It gets wider and wider as it goes up. So I just go ahead and put it in there. Hopefully that makes it so that the piston and the caliper doesn't compress, and I'm able to put it back onto the brake rotor. So right now that I'm gonna have to go ahead and put it back on, I'm gonna have to quickly try to take this off and then put this on before it fully compresses and doesn't let me actually slide it back onto the brake rotor. Alright, so I had to do a little cut in the video there because my battery's dying, and this took a very long time to be able to get the caliper to open up so I could slide the brake rotor in between. But now that it's fully on there, I'm gonna go ahead and reach around the back and try to put these bolts in if I'm able to, because they're kind of deep in there. Putting bolts back on for the brake caliper has got to be one of the simplest yet one of the most infuriating things ever. I always struggle having to line it back up. They never want to go in. So it always takes me way longer than it should to put the bolts back on. But I've gone ahead and put the top one. Now I just need to put the bottom one. Hopefully that's easier because it's not trying to fall on me all the time. And finally, we have put the caliper back onto the brake rotor and have bolted it onto the trailing arm. So now I can go pull the handbrake. So the handbrake has been set. One way to test it out is to grab the rotor, and it no longer spins freely, which means I should be able to tighten down this bolt. So it's a pretty small bolt, so I don't think it needs to be tightened down that much more. So just make sure it's securely on there so that it doesn't get loose. I would also recommend not over tightening that bolt because, like I said, they're small. It's very possible that if you don't have to take it off for a while, once you do try to take it off, it might break or it might get rusted enough that you end up stripping the head of it. So just be careful when you're tightening that bolt. But yeah, everything now is officially tightened down, so I can go ahead and put the tire back on. And actually, before I do that, one thing that I said earlier in the video was that I thought this was like some sort of retaining clip, and I'm still not sure if that is what it is. But what I'm actually thinking more likely is that it's a like a hub centric ring. So the wheel that's on here is not an OEM wheel. So I believe they have this one on there just so it fits more properly on the wheel bearing itself. Now, I haven't had this car that long, so I haven't paid attention. I've taken off some of the other tires that have an actual OEM tire on it, and I don't recall seeing this, which is why I believe this is not more of a retaining clip, but rather more like a hub-centric ring. If any of you guys know, please go ahead and let me know, because I am kind of lost on it. There's some information, but it's kind of faded, so I can't really see what it is. But because it was on it, I'll just go ahead and leave it on there. Don't foresee it causing any issues by leaving it on there. So I'll go ahead and just pop this guy back in there. And I'll do some more research to see if all of the tires actually need it. But yeah, now that that's set, I can go ahead and put the tire on. Alright everyone, and there we have it. The car is now sitting on the floor. Now the last thing I have to do is just go test drive it to see if everything feels good. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys liked it, found it informative or entertaining, please go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one.
Repeat after me. Hakuna Matata.